I've managed this house for over 40 years. It wasn't always this grand. The marble floors, the sweeping staircase, the crystal chandelier overhead. But it was always mine, built brick by brick, alongside your grandfather's steady hands and visionary heart. When he passed, I stepped in to keep everything afloat, paying the taxes, negotiating with contractors, balancing the books. This wasn't just a pile of assets. It was our family's legacy, born of late-night discussions over blueprints and early morning visits to the nursery planting roses he loved. Every corner held a memory of laughter or whispered advice, and I carried them all as carefully as I carried the keys. Your generation didn't see the same struggle. You grew up in the soft glow of inherited comfort. I see it now in the ease with which you ask for favors and in the impatience behind your polished smiles. There's a name for this phenomenon, second-generation wealth. Across the country, families in Connecticut or California discover that children accustomed to privilege lack the same hunger that built their parents' dreams. In 2023, the Johnson family in Los Angeles made national headlines when a daughter was charged with elder financial abuse after pressuring her mother to sign away deeds on the promise of helping manage her affairs. I followed that story closely, how the mother, surrounded by lawyers and a tangled web of bank statements, realized too late she'd handed over her own home. I refused to let our story become another cautionary headline. Yet lately I felt the tension in the halls long before it showed on Lily's face. It began with gentle questions. Have you thought about retirement, Mum? It must be so stressful managing everything alone. Then came invitations to dinner, just to discuss options, each one wrapped in concern, but laced with expectation. Behind those soft words, I could almost hear the cogs turning, imagining a future in which I was too frail or too confused to fight back. They leaned on what I call soft power, quiet manipulation, disguised as affection. Lily would brush my hair back at breakfast and place a steaming mug of tea in my hands. She'd speak of her upcoming project, her new interior designer, her plans to simplify my life. It was so insidious, so gentle that many would miss the razor's edge beneath. I recognized it from my years negotiating business deals. First you flatter, then you insinuate, then you corner. By the time most people realize they're trapped, the invitations have already multiplied, and the witnesses to every polite conversation are standing by, ready to attest that Mum wanted it this way. I remember the day I realized I had underestimated them. It was early spring, the wisteria just beginning to cascade over the terrace. Lily visited with a sheaf of brochures from some high-powered estate planner she had just met, an expensive-looking firm from the city. She handed me a proposal for a trust, complete with charts and bullet points, promising peace of mind. Mum, you won't have to worry about a thing, she said, her tone so warm it could lull a bird to sleep. Yet the numbers on those charts didn't add up to benefits for me. They added up to fees and transfer restrictions that would lock me out once I signed. That's when my heart sank. I saw myself in those brochures, a young woman fresh out of school, naive enough to think that because someone held a polished title, they held my best interest. I had paid for that mistake in business. I refused to pay it here. Too many people I've met them sign away control without reading the fine print, without understanding the difference between a revocable living trust and an irrevocable one, or the implications of naming a successor trustee who lives down the street. I promised myself I'd never let this house slip through my fingers, not because I feared losing money, but because losing it would mean erasing every sunrise I spent tending the gardens every night. I polished the banister in silence, the whisper of my husband's voice guiding my hand. So I began to prepare. I found my grandfather's old ledger, the one where he'd recorded every mortgage payment, every homestead exemption he applied for. I reviewed the will my husband drafted years ago, strictly a backstop he'd said more ceremonial than practical. I contacted friends who had faced similar battles, gathered stories of warning signs, a child suddenly interested in old documents, partners popping up in the background like silent threats, odd financial transactions wired out of state. I reached out to a trusted family attorney who clarified the differences between wills, powers of attorney, and the two types of trusts. I learned that in many states, appointing a durable power of attorney, without specifying narrow limits, can open a floodgate, giving someone authority to move money, sell property, or even decide your health care. In the evenings, I practiced my resolve in the mirror. I recalled my husband's handwriting in his final journal entries, how he warned me that love alone wouldn't deter someone driven by greed, and how he urged me to put safeguards in place. March 17th. He wrote, "She's clever. Yes, but easily blinded by the promise of luxury." And again on June the 2nd. "Secure the legal protections, Evelyn, as if love will never be enough." I let his words echo through me, a reminder that what feels like betrayal often begins as misplaced loyalty. I invited Lily for tea one afternoon, just the two of us in the old sunroom where morning light pours through beveled glass. I didn't mention the brochures or the soft prompts about retirement. Instead, I asked about her work, her friends' needs, her dreams, as if nothing were amiss. I listened intently, letting her fill the silence with her carefully prepared narrative. She and Nathan worried about my health. They wanted to simplify my life so I could travel, rest, enjoy time with friends. All that was missing was the line about signing away the deed. I smiled and let her words wash over me, noting every inflection, every hesitation. She was baiting me, laying down her cards without realizing I was already counting them. Later, I sat alone with my attorney, sketching out a plan. A new, irrevocable trust that would place every asset beyond their reach. Appointing a neutral professional as trustee, naming myself as beneficiary only. I learned the process, drafting the trust agreement, notarizing signatures, recording the transfer with the county clerk. All steps that would take weeks, but were essential to lock in my wishes. I refused to rush. They thrived on urgency, the pressure to act before the next sip of tea, before the next well-meaning invitation. I would starve them of panic. They thought they could push me into signing. They thought they could cloak a takeover in a white-glove service. But I had done my homework. I understood that in states with strong elder protection laws, a well-documented revocable transaction can reverse itself if evidence of undue influence appears. I gathered copies of every brochure Lily had left behind, every email she'd sent, every text promising help if only I signed. I saved bank statements showing no unexplained transfers, proving I was as lucid at 75 as I had been at 45. Most of all, I reclaimed my voice. I practiced saying no thank you without flinching. I reminded myself that saying no didn't make me ungrateful daughter or a mean mother. It made me a guardian of my own legacy. And I knew the moment Lily insisted again, I would look her in the eye and ask her to explain exactly why she thought I couldn't manage my own affairs. That afternoon in the sunroom, when Lily rose to leave and blew a soft kiss in parting, I held her hand just long enough to remind her that my grip was still strong. She left thinking I was fragile. I watched her retreat, knowing that the next time she tried to strike, she would find a fortress waiting. In the next section, we'll explore the legal frameworks of guardianship and incapacity in the United States. How to recognize the warning signs, navigate state-specific procedures, and choose the right combination of wills, powers of attorney, and trusts to secure your legacy. Guardianship is a legal process by which a court names someone called a guardian or conservator to make decisions for an adult who has been found unable to manage their own affairs. I discovered early on that each state handles this differently. In California, where I live, it's called conservatorship, and the court's first question is always this: does the person truly lack capacity to handle their personal needs or financial affairs? In New York, they call it guardianship, but the core principle is the same. You surrender the right to decide for yourself. It's a long, expensive, and very public process. First, someone files a petition. That someone could be your child, your spouse, even a distant relative. Then the court requires a medical evaluation, often from a psychiatrist or psychologist, who examines you and writes an opinion about your mental capacity. After that, there's a hearing where any interested person can testify. Your doctor can speak on your behalf, and so can anyone else who knows you well. Finally, the judge decides whether to remove your rights and appoint the guardian. Once that happens, you lose control of your bank accounts, your real estate, even decisions about where you live. It felt like a death sentence to my independence. I learned that it doesn't always require catastrophic dementia or a hospital stay. Often it begins with subtle suggestions of help from well-meaning children or caregivers, then an evaluation by a doctor who rarely meets you for more than 10 minutes, and suddenly you're branded incapacitated. The real danger is in the ambiguity. What does unable to manage mean? Could it be forgetting an occasional appointment or bouncing a check? Could it be simply trusting the wrong person? That's why I turned my attention to prevention, starting with the foundational tools of estate planning. First, there's the will, a document that lays out who gets your assets after you die. It's essential, but it offers no protection while you're living. If you become incapacitated tomorrow, your will sits dormant until your death certificate is filed. Next came the durable power of attorney DPOA. This document names an agent, someone you trust to act on your behalf if you can't. In theory, it avoids guardianship entirely. Your agent steps in to pay bills, manage investments, and make healthcare decisions. But in practice, DPOAs can be abused. In many states, once the document is signed, your agent's authority is immediate. There's no court oversight unless someone challenges them. I read about a case in Florida where a daughter named agent in her mother's DPOA sold the family home and disappeared with the proceeds before anyone realized what happened. By the time the mother's friends noticed the sale, the daughter was long gone, and the courts said the sale was technically valid. That brought me to trusts. A trust is a legal arrangement in which you transfer ownership of assets to a trustee who holds them for your benefit. There are two main types: revocable living trusts and irrevocable trusts. With a revocable living trust, you can change or cancel the trust any time while you're alive. It's helpful for avoiding probate, a public court process that can take months and cost thousands, but it doesn't protect against guardianship or creditor claims because you still technically own the assets. The true game changer for me was the irrevocable trust. Once you transfer assets into an irrevocable trust, you no longer own them. The trustee does. You can still benefit, receive income from investments, or live in the family home, rent-free. But creditors and guardians can't touch those assets because legally they're not yours. I found a case study from Georgia. Mr. Robert Brown, a retired engineer, placed his $5 million estate into an irrevocable trust and named a professional trust company as trustee. When his eldest son later tried to file a guardianship petition, the court dismissed it, citing that Mr. Brown had demonstrated full capacity in the trust creation documents and had secured independent legal advice at the time. The trust agreement itself was notarized, witnessed, and included language confirming Mr. Brown's understanding and voluntariness. Immaculate planning that cost a few $1,000s but saved millions. Between wills, DPOAs, and trusts, I realized the importance of layering. A will handles distribution at death. A DPOA handles day-to-day needs. A revocable trust handles probate avoidance. And an irrevocable trust locks down the assets for real protection. It sounds complex, but with a skilled estate attorney, it becomes a roadmap rather than a minefield. I pored over state statutes, learning that in California, a durable power of attorney can be drafted with limited powers, say only to pay bills, but not to sell real estate. I added in Re-Elder Abuse Prevention Act, a provision that requires my agent to notify a designated third party like my attorney or a trusted friend if they suspect financial exploitation. I learned to insert springing language the DPOA takes effect only upon certification by 2 licensed physicians that I'm unable to manage my affairs. That adds a safeguard against an agent stepping in too soon. Then I crafted an irrevocable trust under the California Probate Code Section 15400 et SEQ, making sure it complied with the Uniform Trust Code. The trust agreement named a professional trust company as successor trustee. If I became incapacitated with me as primary beneficiary and my charitable foundation as contingent beneficiary. I included a no-contest clause. If anyone unsuccessfully challenged the trust, they would forfeit any gift they'd otherwise receive. That's a powerful deterrent. Legalese aside, the real magic came in understanding timing and witnesses. Every estate plan needs documentation showing you were competent when you signed. So I scheduled meetings with my attorney. We recorded brief video statements of me confirming I understood each document. I invited 2 longtime friends, Linda and Robert, to observe the signing and sign a witness affidavit attesting to my capacity. We even held a small video conferenced estate planning party, complete with tea and scones, where I spoke about why I chose each instrument and how it reflected my values. It was both practical and symbolic, my way of saying I'm in control, surrounded by people who care. I didn't stop at paperwork. I organized an annual capacity review meeting with my physician every spring for a cognitive screening and logging the results. I attached those reports to my estate plan binder. I also reviewed my bank statements monthly, noting in a ledger any unusual activity. I printed quarterly investment statements, marked them as reviewed by Evelyn with a signature and date. If anyone ever claimed I was too confused to manage my finances, I'd have a paper trail that said otherwise. All of this cost time and a few $1,000s, but compared to losing a multi-million-dollar estate, or even the peace of mind that comes with self-determination, it was a bargain. More importantly, it was proof that I valued my autonomy enough to fight for it. Just as I'd learned to fight for every corner of this home over the past 4 decades. So when Lily approaches me next with another glossy brochure or a friendly dinner invitation, I'll have my documents at the ready. I'll be able to say thank you for your concern. But my affairs and budgets are managed by professionals I trust under terms I fully understand. And if anyone still tries to petition for guardianship, the court will see the layers of protection I created long before any hint of incapacity. They'll see a woman who refused to be defined by age or blood relation. A woman who knew that true love sometimes means saying no, and that no can be the strongest word of all. I knew that the real battle wouldn't be fought in a courtroom at first, but in the quiet corners of my own home, around the breakfast table, in the sunlit kitchen, even on the front porch swing. Lily and Daniel would press their case softly like gardeners, coaxing a plant to bloom, gentle at first, then insistent. I would need more than legal documents. I would need proof. So I turned to 2 things I had long relied on in business negotiations: understanding my adversary's psychology and gathering rock-solid evidence. Lily's favorite tactic was what psychologists call gaslighting. She'd say, "I'm only worried because you've seemed so forgetful lately," after I'd simply misplaced my reading glasses. Or Daniel would lean forward, his voice low and comforting. "We just want what's best for you." They cloaked their ambition in concern. In the Texas case, I read about the one where Jane Doe's daughter convinced her that she was becoming a burden. then quietly sold her mother's stock portfolio, this same pattern emerged. First, you undermine confidence. Then you step in as savior, offering help in exchange for control. I refused to let that happen to me. Whenever Lily began that sympathetic tone, I let her finish nodded and asked a neutral question. Can you give me examples of what you think I'm overlooking? It forced her to articulate specifics rather than repeat vague worries. Each time I did this, I recorded the conversation. In California, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. That one party could legally be me. I bought a small digital recorder, no larger than a car key fob, and stashed it in a decorative box on my coffee table. When Lily arrived for our helpful chat, I'd casually slip it behind a cushion. The device would capture every carefully phrased concern, every implied threat that the courts would prefer it if I let someone professional handle these matters. I remembered the horror story of an Illinois woman who tried the same strategy but ran afoul of their two-party consent law. Her recordings were thrown out, and she lost the only evidence she had. I triple-checked my state statute, then read the fine print on the recorder's packaging. Yes, one-party consent was perfectly legal here, so long as I was present and aware. Words alone wouldn't be enough. I began centralizing every relevant document. Emails and text messages, I created a dedicated folder on my computer and saved PDFs of every email Lily sent those innocuous. Here's an article on senior living options notes. I took screenshots of texts promising no rush or just want your peace of mind complete with timestamps. Bank statements. Each month, I downloaded my full statements in PDF and stored them in a labeled binder. Whenever Lily offered to help balance the books, I asked her to email me her suggestions so I could review them. Those emailed spreadsheets became evidence of her attempts to steer transactions. Metadata and file properties. I learned that metadata file creation dates, edit histories could prove when a document was drafted. If Lily forwarded me a proposed transfer agreement, the PDF's properties would show the exact date and time she created it. I printed those details alongside the document itself. Witness affidavits. I asked two neighbors, Mrs. Chen and Mr. Alvarez, to sign brief statements. On April the 12th, I overheard Ms. Carrington tell Mrs. Hawthorne that she would benefit from a professional estate plan. Mrs. Hawthorne appeared fully coherent. Their signed notes bolstered my case that I was of sound mind throughout. Over the next few weeks, I invited Lily and Daniel to 3 different occasions. Casual brunch in the garden room. Under the wisteria vines, they spoke of simplifying my will. I kept silent, nodded encouragingly, then asked, "Can you send me your draft language afterward?" That request ensured they would email me the exact words. Afternoon tea, by the bay window. They arrived bearing their chosen estate planners' brochures. I praised the firm's credentials, but asked them to walk me through the fee schedule in writing. When Daniel stumbled to explain why the fees were so steep, he did so on tape. Sunday lunch in the dining hall. Over roast chicken and roast carrots. Lily leaned in and murmured, "Aren't you worried about rising property taxes? We should transfer the deed now." Her proposed timing before next quarter's assessments was recorded verbatim. Each time I followed the same pattern. Welcome them warmly. Listen attentively, ask for specifics in writing, and let the recorder run. Later, I reviewed every file, labeling moments where they had suggested I was incapable or had pressured me into urgency. I was careful to avoid the mistakes so many make. No hidden cameras or secret mics. I used a one-party consent recorder only, never video cameras that capture others without consent. That can veer into illegal territory. Preserving originals. When Lily handed me printed drafts, I signed and returned them, and then filed both originals and copies in a locked cabinet. I didn't rely on notes. I kept the source documents. Professional format. I numbered each document, added cover pages, listing the date, time, and context, and had my attorney review the filing system. If anyone questioned authenticity, it would be clear I had maintained an unbroken chain of custody. Daniel especially used what I call slow creep. At first, he'd casually mention how overwhelmed he felt helping with his own mortgage. Later, he'd compare it to my estate issues, Mum. You don't want to deal with this when you're nearing 80. He framed the transfer as kindness. In behavioral psychology, this is called the foot in the door technique. Get someone to agree to a small request, then gradually increase the stakes. I observed that whenever they sensed hesitation, they would soft pitch again, bring up my health drop photos of luxury retirement communities on my coffee table just for inspiration. Each tactic was recorded, catalogued, and cross-referenced with the binder of emails. By the end of the month, I had 18 audio recordings totaling over 3 hours of conversation, 45 PDF files of emails, brochures, and text messages, 12 bank statement scripts annotated to show where Lily suggested joint account moves, 3 witness affidavits from neighbours, plus a signed affidavit from my accountant confirming no unexplained transfers. My attorney helped me compile a chronology of undue influence, a 30-page document that wove together transcripts, summaries, and exhibit lists. It read like a narrative, starting with the first concerned email and ending with the last recorded dinner plea. The most striking moment came during a small family gathering disguised as a house tour. Lily led me through the drawing room, pointing out new paint colours. Then she paused by the fireplace and quietly said, "Wouldn't it be easier if this house were already in my name? You wouldn't have to worry about upkeep and I could manage renovations." She never raised her voice, never threatened moves. Her tone was serene, yet her meaning was clear. My fingers tightened around the recorder hidden in my purse. That single sentence, captured in high fidelity, would later prove intent beyond a shadow of doubt. They thought they could trap me with soft smiles and whispered urgings, but each invitation was a chance to turn their words into evidence. In the quiet of my study, surrounded by binders and recordings, I felt the scales begin to tip. Next, we'll explore how to transform this arsenal of evidence into a strategic defense, how to employ an irrevocable trust and tactical reveal moments to neutralize undue influence and reclaim true control. I sat at my broad oak desk in the study one crisp autumn morning, the low golden light slanting through the half-open shutters and dust motes dancing like tiny sparks. Before me lay the final drafts of the irrevocable trust documents, 100 pages of legal precision, designed to do what nothing else had been able to: put my assets forever beyond the reach of those who would prey on my age or affection. In that quiet moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: unshakable certainty. My attorney, Martha, had guided me step by step. We chose a professional trust company as trustee, someone impartial, experienced, and bound by fiduciary duty. It wasn't an abstract corporation. It was a local firm with polished offices and seasoned officers I had met over tea. Their role was simple: hold and manage the assets for my benefit under terms I alone defined. We specified that the trust would include the family home, every square foot of the estate, the gardens, the carriage house, couched in precise legal description so no portion could be carved out later, investment accounts, brokerage and retirement accounts transferred outright into the trust name, personal property, my late husband's collection of first editions, the sterling silver service, the antique rugs, each listed on a schedule so nothing could be forgotten. We drafted language that honored my original intent. I would retain lifetime occupancy of the home, the right to draw on the investment corpus for living expenses, and the ability to remove or replace the professional trustee if I found cause. But the key provision was the irrevocable clause. Once signed, I could not unilaterally dissolve the trust or reclaim title. To everyone else, legally, the assets were no longer mine to touch. On the appointed day, I invited my 2 nearest neighbours, Mrs. Chen and Mr. Alvarez to bear witness. We gathered in the sunroom again, the same space where Lily had delivered so many thinly veiled warnings. I wore a pale blue silk blouse, calm but confident. Over cups of chamomile tea, my attorney read aloud the recitals, my name, my capacity, my desire to protect the estate I'd tended for decades. Then I affixed my signature at the end of each section, stylus firm and deliberate. As the notary stamped the pages, I looked at Mrs. Chen's steady eyes and Mr. Alvarez's quiet nod, and I realized how far I'd come from that moment at the birthday party when Lily dared me to sign it tonight. Now the signature felt like a shield, each letter a brick in the new fortress protecting my autonomy. I didn't leave the trust documents gathering dust. The moment the trust was notarized, I recorded the entire process on video again. One-party consent, just the attorney explaining my intent and me confirming I understand every provision and sign of my own free will. I printed still frames, added them as exhibits, and indexed them in my chronology of protection binder. By the time Lily or Daniel could file any petition, the court would have more than a dozen proofs of my competence and intent. I knew that a single legal document, no matter how airtight, meant nothing if my adversaries believed they still had a chance. So, I planned one last gathering, a dinner, inviting Lily and Brent back under the guise of reviewing the preliminary transfer paperwork. They arrived hopeful, too eager by half, carrying bottles of wine like trophies. This was how Edward, our butler, recalled Lily always arriving, smile-bright, step-light arms, full of promise. I wore the same calm smile I'd perfected, the one that said, "I'm frail, overwhelmed, but ever so grateful for your help." We dined on roast beef and honey-glazed carrots. Lily buttered my bread slice, Brent poured water, and I thanked them for the peace of mind they had offered. At the table's center lay the trust's summary, a one-page sheet I'd prepared in readable language. Irrevocable family trust terms. Trustee beneficiary effective date. After the plates were cleared and the dining room quieted, I handed the summary to Lily. She skimmed it, then looked up with a puzzled frown. "Mother, what's this?" she asked softly. Brent leaned in behind her shoulder, protective, confident. I let my voice tremble just enough. "It's the new trust agreement I signed this morning," I said. "I thought it might be simpler to review together so we're all clear on the future of the house." Their faces drained of color. Brent's jaw tightened. Lily's hand shook on the table. I poured more water for Lily, then sat back, allowing the silence to bloom. I reached under the table and retrieved the small recorder, silent witness to every word, every tremor. "Why would you do that?" Lily's voice cracked. "You know we only wanted to help." Brent tried to interject. "This isn't legal." "It is," I said. "Every page is notarized, every clause witnessed, every intent recorded. My attorney mailed certified copies to both of you this afternoon. You have until Friday to ask any questions, but after that, these assets belong solely to the trust." Lily's gaze swam with tears and rage. "You can't lock us out." I leaned forward, voice measured. "I can, and I have. These are not your decisions to make. You insisted urgency, but I insisted on clarity." I clicked the recorder on the table, and Lily's own voice filled the room. "We must act before your faculties decline," she had said over tea. "Don't you want peace of mind?" She looked at Brent. "We never meant harm," she whispered. "Intent matters," I said softly. "But here the law and the facts are clear. You tried to engineer a guardianship. You tried to manipulate me into signing away my rights. The trust guards against that, and the recordings document every attempt." Brent's face went ashen. Lily's lips parted, but no words came. Edward appeared at the doorway with a tray of lemon tartlets, as if nothing unusual had happened. I excused myself to the foyer to take a call from my attorney, confirming a final step. The trust instruments were now officially recorded with the county clerk. On the threshold, I paused and looked back at Lily and Brent. A mother to her children, no more, no less, but now shielded by the strongest armor I could craft. Later that night, I added one final measure. A letter to my family physician, Dr. Adler, summarizing the trust's existence and requesting that any future invitations to sign other estate documents be forwarded to my attorney first. I sealed it in an envelope marked personal and confidential and asked Maria, our house manager, to place it in my desk. That way, if anyone approached me directly and only I could authorize disclosure, they would trigger an immediate alert to counsel. I also updated my will to restate that any attempt to override the irrevocable trust would be void. It was redundancy, perhaps, but in estate planning, redundancy is protection. I printed a new table of contents for the chronology binder and cross-referenced the will amendment under safety nets. In the weeks that followed, Lily and Brent grew distant. They continued to call, but their tone had shifted. They asked about my health, about upcoming events, but never about estate paperwork. At family gatherings, I noticed Lily's eyes flicker to the sunroom shelves, where my attorney's letters sat, and to the desk where the trust binders rested. She seemed younger somehow, uncertain, without her usual swagger. I, in turn, felt lighter. The house no longer bore the hush of unspoken tensions. It resonated with the gentle creaks of old floorboards under my confident steps. I walked through each room, breathing in the familiar sense of polish and old paper, knowing that no one could relegate me to a mere shadow behind these walls. This strategy wasn't about outwitting my children in a single stroke. It was about timing, waiting until every safeguard was in place before revealing the full picture. It was about execution. Precisely notarized documents, witnessed signatures, public record filings. And it was about demeanor, playing the part of the vulnerable elder until the moment I flipped the switch, then revealing the fortress I had built brick by brick. Like a general laying siege, I had encircled the estate with legal barriers and psychological maneuvers. And when I finally delivered the coup de grace, the trust in hand, and the recordings as proof, the fortress held unbreachable. I closed my desk drawer that night and stood by the window looking out at the iron gates that guarded the drive. The leaves rattled in the cool breeze, and I felt something settle deep in my chest. The peace that comes not from silence, but from being heard, and from knowing that your home, your legacy, is truly your own. In the final section, we will draw together the key takeaways from this journey, from identifying red flags to building your legal defenses, and offer a practical checklist so you can protect yourself and your family's legacy before it's too late. The winter after I secured the irrevocable trust was unusually mild, as if the weather itself respected the quiet peace that settled over the estate. I spent mornings in the library leafing through Robert's journals once more, savouring the proof that I had honoured his legacy. Afternoons found me in the sunroom, knitting a blanket for the new orphan puppy I had adopted, another testament that my life remained rich with purpose and choice. No longer did I walk the halls with the weight of unspoken threats bearing down on me. Instead, I moved freely, my head held high. In those gentle months, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. What began as a daughter's subtle pressure to sign away her inheritance became a multi-layered defense built on understanding documentation and decisive action. If I were to distill everything I'd learned into practical guidance for anyone who might one day face a similar test, it would look something like this. 1. Recognize the red flags. Early soft power in action. Those repeated helpful questions about retirement. The casual mentions of simplifying your life, the gift of a brochure, or an estate planner's glossy pamphlet. Each is a potential opening move in a larger play. When a loved one begins to suggest managing your affairs for your own good, pause and note the pattern. Ambiguity of capacity. Forgetfulness alone does not equate to incapacity. If someone hints that you're slipping, ask for concrete examples. Record your conversations where legally permissible, and keep a journal entry of your own, noting dates and details. 2. Layer your legal protections. Will the cornerstone of any estate plan. It designates beneficiaries at death, but does nothing for your living needs. Review it every few years to ensure it reflects current relationships and assets. Durable power of attorney. Name a trusted agent for financial and healthcare decisions. Use springing language so the document only takes effect upon certification of incapacity, not the moment it's signed. Limit powers, where appropriate, perhaps authorize bill paying but not real estate transfers. Revocable living trust. A flexible tool for avoiding probate. You retain ownership and control, but can amend or revoke the trust at will. It keeps your affairs private, but offers no protection against guardianship or creditors. Irrevocable trust. The strongest barrier. Transfer assets out of your personal name and into a trust managed by a neutral trustee. You may retain benefits income occupancy rights, but legal ownership transfers away from you. Once in place, it cannot be undone without the cooperation of beneficiaries or a court, making it an effective shield. 3. Document. Every step audio and written records. In one-party consent states, record conversations where pressure arises. Save every email, text, and letter. For each document, draft trust agreements, power of attorney forms, note its creation date, author, and context. Witnesses and video invite neutral third parties to observe key signings. A short video statement in which you affirm your understanding and voluntariness can be invaluable. Medical and financial logs. Schedule annual capacity reviews with your doctor and keep lab reports or cognitive screenings in a folder. Download monthly bank statements, mark them. Reviewed and sign and date each page. 4. Play the part. Strategically appear vulnerable. Stay vigilant. Let concerned family members believe their gentle tactics are working until they're firmly trapped in your web of evidence. Nodding along, asking for documents in writing, inviting helpful discussions, all feed into your documented chronology. Choose your moments. Don't rush to reveal your defense until every safeguard is in place. The final reveal. The signed trust. The recordings, the affidavits, should come as a surprise, too formidable to overcome. 5. Build your support network. Professional advisors. Engage an estate planning attorney experienced in elder law. Consider a certified public accountant for unbiased financial oversight. A professional trust company can serve as trustee, removing emotional bias. Trusted confidants. Keep close friends or neighbors in the loop, not with intimate details, but with affidavits indicating they've witnessed normal interactions and noted your sound mind. Their statements may prove decisive if challenged. Healthcare partners. Let your physician and local clinic know your wishes and ask them to report any unsolicited requests for capacity evaluations to your attorney first. This extra layer helps guard against surprise petitions. I tucked this checklist into a leather-bound notebook alongside a printed estate plan overview that I keep on my desk. Whenever a new friend expresses curiosity about my process, I hand it to them and say, "It's not just paperwork, it's peace of mind." As spring unfurled its blooms, I hosted a small garden party to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Robert's passing, a milestone I never thought I'd honor, without the anxiety of family disputes dimming the occasion. Lily and Brent were invited, though they arrived with polite distance. They stood by the gate, then drifted away when they sensed this celebration was no longer theirs to steer. I waved to them, not with bitterness, but with a serene understanding that our relationship had changed. I had earned the right to choose how we moved forward. The guests included Mrs. Chen and Mr. Del Alvarez, whose affidavits still rested in my firm grip, Linda and Robert, who had watched the notarization and the video recording, my attorney Martha, who explained the nuances of the trust over glass pitchers of iced tea, and a handful of neighbours who had once witnessed the first concerned emails I received from Lily. We talked about roses and spring bulbs, about grandchildren and granddaughters' piano recitals. No mention was made of property transfers or legal documents, only of life unfolding rich in moments both ordinary and profound. If there's one truth I want to leave you with, it's that autonomy is not an entitlement, it's an achievement. Just as I tended the garden beds every year, pruning dead branches, fertilizing the soil, guarding against invasive weeds, I tended my estate plan with equal care. I watered it with attention, fortified it with professional expertise, and guarded it with clear-eyed vigilance. And when I finally revealed the fortress of documents and evidence I had built, it stood strong not because of a single wall, but because of the many interlocking defenses I had layered over time. In the end, our families should be sources of love and support, not arenas for power struggles. But love alone cannot protect our wishes or our legacies. You deserve to age with dignity and control over your own life's work, whether that's a sprawling estate, a cherished collection of art, or simply the right to say no without apology. Take the steps now. Document each one meticulously and gather your allies. Your future self will thank you for the clarity and security you create today. And as the sun dipped low over the rose garden that evening, I realized that I had not only protected bricks and mortar, I had protected the story of our family written in every beam and pane, so that it would remain whole for those who come after me. That more than any inheritance is the true legacy I leave behind.